What's up, traders? Anthony Crudele here, and thank you for tuning in to the Futures Radio Show podcast. We are live here on Twitter and on YouTube with my boy, Jimmy Driscoll, otherwise known as Jimmy Jude on Twitter. Boy, am I excited for today's show, everybody. I'm so glad to bring it to you guys here live today. Now, Jimmy and I go back to the floor days, but we didn't know each other on the trading floors. You know, everyone thinks that just because we came from the pits that we all know each other. It was a big place. So we're going to get into that a little bit today and how we actually became really good friends because of FinTwit and social media. And now Jimmy and I have a lot of fun conversations. So it's great to be with all of you here today. We will be taking questions live in the second half of the show. Put your questions in YouTube and we will get to them later. So don't think that we're ignoring you. We're not. We're just going to wait till the end of the show to get to the questions. Bunch of stuff we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about his background in the pit, who he thought the best trader was, who he thought the craziest trader was. We're going to talk about Jimmy's style of trading. A lot of the questions that people were already sending in for Jimmy were, Anthony, I want to know how he analyzes the VIX and the S&P. So we'll go to the charts. And then, like I said, at the end of the show, we're going to get into some questions. So let's get Jimmy here on the line. But before we do, Futures Radio Show is sponsored by CME Group. Remember, Micro Crudele futures are now live at CME. To learn more, go to activetrader.cmegroup.com. Futures Radio Show is also sponsored by Trading Technologies, TradeStation, and FTSE Russell. The Russell 2000 is a key benchmark for small cap U.S. stocks. Be sure to check out the E-Mini Russell 2000 future symbol RTY and Micro E-Mini Russell 2000 future symbol M2K. To learn more about FTSE Russell and their products, please visit FTSERussell.com. Back in 15 seconds with Jimmy Jude.
I added futures to my trading strategy. Now, I have 24/7 access to diverse global markets, including crude oil. Like I always say, leave no opportunity untapped. I'll just sign that. Yeah, got it.
We've got Jimmy live, everybody.
Hey, dude.
What's
How
up?
are you?
Good, buddy. So great to have you here live. You know, everybody keeps asking me to talk to you about the days in the pits. And, you know, you and I have talked about this on Twitter and how, you know, we're old pit guys.
Right.
We're the older guys now, you know.
Right.
We're still young, though. And so I'm actually going to start a little bit about our backgrounds. And because like I mentioned on the intro, that we both came from the pit, but we didn't know each other then. We were both at CME. We're both CME guys, not like CME board guys where a lot of people get that confused and they say, well, oh, he was on the floor and he was at the board or he was at CME.
Right.
We were both at CME, but we were just in just different floors, different areas.
We were in different there were definitely sandboxes that we played in, you know what I mean? And you had to like they were like their own little ecosystems and you had to deal with like that fucking, you know, thing. And like yours was the S&P pit. Like I literally, I never had the balls to walk into the S&P pit as not an S&P trader. You know what I mean? Because you just go to the mouth of that beast. And, you know, like, unless you're in that group of dudes, you're not walking in there and trading. Like I did trade a little bit in the NASDAQ pit because it was a little bit more of the Wild West. And it was just kind of like, hey, enter if you have the balls to enter this fucking pit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like your world was, I knew better than to enter your world as an outsider.
It's so funny. That's how it was. I don't think people really quite understand that. You know, nowadays we trade a bunch of different markets because we just have them at our fingertips. Right. You grew up trading really one market, and then you really developed a style around that market. And you and I both talked about this. You got to build that relationship with the market. We both stood in pits as clerks for years before we learned about, you know, the market and then developed a process around it. Where did you originally start and then start to develop your process as a trader?
Well, you know, like in the beginning, when you're like thrown onto the floor, you're just like so happy that you're not in an office and you found something that like that is, you know, because, you know, I graduated college. I didn't want to be in a cubicle type of thing, you know. So I got on the floor, and there's so much to learn. There were so many avenues, like where do I go? And I got some really good advice in the beginning. Some guy was like, listen, you know, go options, try to get in the options pit. You know, first of all, everything is based on options. The futures move, you know, they hit the options first. It'll be like for career longevity and everything like that. But also, you know, being like a market maker and being in the options pit at the CME kind of provided you with a little more insulation than just being like a straight futures trader. You know, if that makes any sense. I don't know. But that's why I went my route in the beginning and went into options first. I went into the Eurodollar options pit first, which was, you know, like, talk about jumping in, you know, with both feet, because that was the most, like, I went into the pit in like 95, and that was the most sophisticated options trading pit on the planet at the time. You know, you had rates moving around. It was the front end of, you know, the yield curve. You had Greenspan, like, you know, like the guy would like recite poetry, and you'd have to fucking figure out, you know, what the hell he just said. And it was a great time. Plus that pit was filled with like legends, you know, like legends.
So funny story. And I don't know if I've even gone over this with you before, but so I started first at Lynn Waldock. I think most people did, right? That's where you got in, 532. I started from them. I went to Refco.
or Rosenthal Collins. Or
RCG.
Yeah,
so I started.
Meets.
Yeah, I was running in the meets.
Yeah.
And then I found an opportunity in the Eurodollar options. So I was actually in the Eurodollar options in 1996. And you're going to get a kick out of this. I don't think I ever told you. Yeah. In 1996, I started in there. And that's where I went before the S&P. But I worked for Mike and Pam DiGregorio. MPM.
Oh, yeah, I know
you remember them?
Well, yeah.
It was a small little group. Joe Kaz, Hef.
Yeah. No way.
That's where
Holy
I worked.
Shit.
And I was on Hef's side, which was right behind Fo, who I would say is probably, when you look back, probably the most successful broker. And actually probably that corner of the pit was probably the most successful corner of any pit in any place in the world. And right or wrong.
Right. I mean, you know,
and I left there to go to the
Don
S&P.
Wilson. Don Wilson dragged $100 million out of that in 2000. You know, like, or actually, I think it was 2001 he did. But I mean, like, yeah, it's when you talk about like money moving through a pit. There was, you know, like you could make millions, but you could also get evaporated like quickly, which I did. You know, a couple times early in my career, I got like, you know, blown up. And to the point where it was like, you know, the blowout. I was short options. That was the problem. Like early in my career, I loved to sell options. I love to be short premium. But then, you know, you have those like, we kept having those like one-off moments between 95 and 97 where you had like long-term capital, or you had the Asian, you know, Russian ruble crisis. You know, you just kept having these things that like I finally, you know, it got through to a young trader. Maybe you shouldn't just be always short a shitload of options and lazily collecting premium, you know. So, but, you know, like that pit at the time too, like gave me my first mentors. I stood right next to Don Wilson. I stood right next to, you know, a bunch of like, probably the greatest market makers in history.
Fred.
Yeah, you know what I mean? These guys were like these guys were badasses, you know, like so I definitely like I saw how they played the market, and like and that's been like the key to my career. Like it's not like me figuring this shit out on my own. It's always been me finding the right guy to talk to and teach me to like take me to that next step, because you can never stop in this business. You always have to keep moving. You always, you know, so I'm always looking for that next dude that's like figuring it out, and, you know, like to have a conversation. And I'm always looking for my next mentor, because it's tantamount. You can't do this alone. you can't just sit in front of your screens. You know, you'll go insane. So, and I learned that at a very early age, which was fortunate, you know.
What was your path to getting to the point where you had your own account and became a trader? What markets were you trading?
Well, you know what? Like I worked for this dude, Roger Carlson. He was like this financier from London, and he was crazy. First Continental Trading was the company at the time, and it was all his money. So he was like, you know, he backed everybody in the pit, and he was a complete lunatic when it came to risk. He did not give a shit what you did. Like he wanted you to hit the gas and go for it, you know, which like, I don't know, like in the beginning when you're just like, when you're a new trader and that's like all you've heard, you're like, and that's all I knew, you know what I mean? That's why, like, I was running positions, that were 250,000, 300,000 contracts in the Euro options, which might not be big now, but back then that was like probably the second biggest position in the pit. And when, you know, like when shit went bad on a position that big, it was like turning, you know, a barge around in a bathtub, you know, like those are the things I learned, you know what I mean? Like in reality, you know, like if there's one thing I've learned every lesson the hard way, you know what I mean? So I've been trading for, I don't know, 27 years or whatever, but it's like my edge and the reason I'm in the game is because I fucked up so much in the beginning and got fucking crushed that, like, you know, it changed me as a trader and as a person. And those failures like made me be able to have a 27-year career, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of people always say, you know, as pit guys, how do we make that transition? I think most people know my story and how I really started trading the E-Mini S&P pretty much right out of the gates. I only spent 6 months in the pit because I was not very good at it. Right. And nobody would trade with me. And after 6 months, I was, having ketchup sandwiches. And right. My brother had to borrow money from my brother to take the train because I had no money left, and he took my job as a clerk. And you think,
right? You definitely went like we both went the hard way in our separate ways. Like I went the hard way because I was in a pit where everyone was smarter than me. You went the hard way because you went into a pit where it was like, who the fuck are you, dude?
Dude, I mean, you thought after all those years,
I may give you a one lot if you jump up and down for 4 hours straight screaming. You know,
I don't want to spend a ton of time on the pit, but I want to do one quick thing. So do you remember your first trade in there? I'm going to go over mine real quick. And it was, I'll never forget, it was with a local, and I went into the pit, and it was with Elcar. And I remember I bought one, and then I sold one for a 5-tick loser. It was a 2-lot. It was a 2x2. I lost 10 ticks. I wrote them up on the card, and I'm like, do you think the guy would have let me out for a scratch? Of course he didn't. I was like, half on 2. He's like, sold. Next thing you know, everyone's at a half. I'm like, 2 and even. He's like, buy him. I'm like, thanks, dude. Do you remember your first one?
My first, yeah, definitely. I still have my first trading card because, like, as soon as I got into the pit, like, one of my really good friends was Bill O'Donnell. He was Woody on the floor, Woodcod, and he really like he got me through like the broke clerk part of being on the floor and all the stress and pressure of like you can't imagine when you walk into a pit for the first time with your stupid fucking jacket and your little like brand new like badge. It's like walking into like a varsity football locker room in a band uniform. You know what I mean? Like everyone stares at you and is like, who the fuck is this? You know? So like when I got in the pit, like Bill immediately like ran up to me and like hit me on like the most egregious berry on the fucking planet. And it was like, it was just a 50 lot, but it was like a $2,000 winner, you know? And he was like, I was saving this one for you. You know, he's like, you got to start with a winner, you know? So like, I absolutely remember my first trade because it was with like my good friend. It was awesome, you know?
Yeah. I was coming into the pit late thinking I was a big shot, you know, come in there. All my good trader buddies are already done. They made their money. Well, first of all, I couldn't even get into the pit because it was so busy, right? You know? And of course I trade with the one guy who's not going to let me out for a scratch. I know. I'll never forget it, Elcar. I'll never forget it. But Yeah.
It was Elkhart that did that to you?
Elcar, LCAR. Yeah. He doesn't remember, but I'm sure, I'll never forget it.
Right.
So I want to get into a couple more things because eventually at some point today, we're going to get to the charts because I know everyone's, wants to see what your analysis looks like.
Right.
And I want to stay a little bit on the pit before we take a break. And the transition, I think this is just really the one thing I want to talk about is that, like I said, I made my transition relatively quickly. You were around all these brilliant guys. And I think, options, if any market was able to transition over, was probably that over just the outright scalpers and the futures.
Yeah.
I think they had a much harder time. And like you said at the beginning, I think you were spot on where you was like, you just had a stronger hand in the marketplace if you were in the options pit versus just the outright futures pit. So how did you make that transition? And what did you, I know that you ended up working for some props. We have some fellow friends that were in there. How did that all work out?
Well, you know what? Like I had come to the point where I was just kind of trading my own money, trading like alone in the Europe, and still in the options pit. But it was like 2004, and like they started to trade side by side futures with the on the electronic with the pit. And like one day they the market like moved like 25 basis points and the pit didn't do anything. And we're like looking up at the screen and we're seeing like the electronic move and the pit's quiet. And I'm like, is that the fucking market? Is that real? Like, can I do those? Because I have trade, you know what I mean? And like everyone kind of stared at each other like, what the fuck just happened? And at that moment, I realized like, oh, fuck, here it is.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the game's changed. There's, everyone in the futures pit's fucked. And, I need to re-educate myself on how futures move because all I am is an options trader at that point. I'm a great spreader. I'm a decent market maker. I'm a good position manager, but I don't know shit about futures. So I hightailed my ass out of the pit and over to a prop firm that a friend of mine was in. And like, I still feel like that was the best prop firm like ever, like in its heyday, International Trading Group or whatever. It was headed by Dave Ellis, but all my boys were over there. That went early.
Good crew, man. I know all those guys. Not all of them, but I know a lot.
Shit. You want to talk about one room fucking setting size into the market? Like there was
some of the best.
There was literally like 50 guys in a room that would like all blast 1,000 bonds or like lift 500 S&Ps. Like these guys were out of their minds, and the most fascinating part of it to me is none of them had, or most of them had never touched a pit, So it was like fascinating to learn from like get in that environment and learn like about the organic movements of markets and like and that was like Dave Ellis he was an S&P trader. He was in the pit.
Yeah, he's best friends with Gary Lev.
Started the company, but he was like he's kind of like a soul surfer trader. Like he's really into like like the organic movements, the math behind it. You know what I mean? He's not like hey, you gotta have balls to fucking butt. You know what I mean? He's not that guy. So like it was really great to get that like cerebral part of trading from a different mentor than the floor, which was always like, balls, big, risk, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, so, and that was really important because and what's fucked up about that situation is I got there really early. And so I watched these S&P traders come out of the pit and hit ITG, like one after another, like, and these guys, like I was literally trading, I was trying to lower my trades to the point where I was trading like maybe 3 or 4 times a day, like, because I was starting to see like the fact that like there isn't a moment there, you shouldn't be just wildly clicking like, and these S&P traders would come out of the pit and they would trade like 80 times a day. And then and would like say it as if it was like something cool, like, yeah, I did, 1,600 round turns today. And it's like, hey, asshole, that's like, start adapting because that's how you're going to get fucked. Like, it's not about your round turns, moron, And that's.
No, yeah, go ahead.
No, and like, so I witnessed that transition. I witnessed people failing miserably at that transition. And then but I also witnessed dudes like make the transition correctly, you know? So like, that was invaluable. Watching these assholes come off the floor and trading 80 times a day and getting fired 2 weeks, you know, and then like watching an older guy come off the floor, you know, developing his charts, his, you know, I was like, oh, okay, this is all right. I see. You know what I mean? It was fantastic to see both extremes.
No, absolutely. It's so interesting how your transition came about. And I actually have a story for you, and it's going to lead into a couple of things. First is I was going to ask you who you thought the best trader that you knew was. I think we both probably know who the best trader coming out of CME was. Probably not much of a mystery there, but I want to say from our pits. And so let's just do that, because I got a really good story for you about that day where you were in there. That this is something else that we haven't talked about. We've talked about a lot. We've had a lot of long conversations, but there's a little interesting story there I'm going to share with you when I hear. First off, let's just get into it. Who's the best trader you were around in your career?
Well,
in the pit.
You know, like say like technology didn't like come into the situation.
Yes.
Like obviously Don Wilson was the best, because not only was he brilliant beyond every like extreme, but the guy had balls like you can't even imagine. You know what I mean? Like most, like that was the thing that separated people in the pit. Most people that were like cerebral didn't have balls, and most people, you know what I mean? Like vice versa. That lunatic had like both, and he had them like church bells. You know what I mean? Like he would take on Goldman Sachs, and you know, like at the time, you know, when I used to be on the pit committee. Of course, Wilson put me on the pit committee because he knew I was his boy. You know what I mean? So I would obviously be settling things in our favor, you know, every day. And like he would put on these positions where I was like, dude, you know, like I don't know if I can settle it at this price, you know, like, and he's like, believe me, you settle it at this price for 3 days in a row, it'll trade there and Goldman will panic, you know, and I would do it and it would happen. You know, like the guy was just like, he had like all sorts of levels, you know what I mean? Which was amazing, because he's really actually just like, you know, like what made probably his personality, because I spent so much time with him. He was probably a really, you know, he moved a lot. He was a dorky kid. He was super intelligent and everything. But holy shit, man, when it was time to, you know, that kid to face the world, he was furious. And like he still is. And I still like, he's the guy that I respect the most. You know, I did work with Margie Teller for a while. We tried to do something together. She's another one that's like amazing. I caught her at like the tail end of her career, and she just didn't want to fucking deal with it anymore, type of thing, you know? But like, she was another, like, and they were like on either ends, you know, Wilson was in the options, Margie was in like the back months.
Yeah.
But those two people, like, you know, Margie Teller is a freak of nature, you know, with that, you know, both of them are, where they can see like an entire board, like your matrix or whatever, your spread board, and they can just like they see everything that's printing, trading, and they know all the different combinations, and it's in their head, and it's like, and the matrix is slow for them, and you know what I mean? And you just like, I look at those dudes and just really admire them, you know, like I know I can't be that guy, which is like another important thing in trading. Don't try to be someone you're not going to be, because that'll fuck you up big time.
Oh, that's my biggest failures. Those are my biggest failures when I tried to be like these other traders. Talk about it. Just is, you can learn from others, and you've talked about that at the beginning of the show today. But when you try to be like someone else, it's when you start running into difficulty. For me, it was my biggest failures where I'm like, well, he's doing it, making money right next to me, and I'm sitting here losing my ass. I could never understand how that worked.
Right.
And those two names are, when I thought about upstairs, you know, those two were the best. You know, I mean, I got to watch Don Wilson, and I'll never forget. He goes, I mean, as a clerk in there, remember they coming in, and I'm probably going to botch this, so I don't need some Eurodollar option guy sending me a message about the way I'm doing it. But it used to be like short, D's, 40 put spread, you know what I mean? Something like that. And then they would be like versus futures at X. And then what would, and he'd be like, everyone would be looking at their sheets and he'd be like, 1, 2. And you're like, what is that?
Right.
And that's when I knew, I'm like, I got to get out of here.
Right.
Because I'm not going to be able to quote that. I don't even know how is he doing that? And they were doing it like that.
Yeah.
And that's when I made my way downstairs in the S&P. But so for me, the S&P, a lot of people have asked me this. I've never really talked much about it. Who I thought the best S&P pit trader was. One of them was my mentor. There's actually two they're just different styles. But I think when I look back at the S&P pit, my mentor was Louis Lauder. I thought he was the best understander of markets. I don't think he was the best trader. I think that he was the best understander of markets. He taught me a lot, which transitioned over to the screen, helped my transition. But I thought the best S&P trader was Praz. And everybody talks about Joey. Everybody talks about, a lot of other guys, okay? And Joey Borson, who I'm good friends with, who I thought was great. I think when you thought of the S&P pit, you thought about Joey Borson. But Praz was his presence, and it's so different when I look at how you compare like a Don Wilson and a Margie to like Praz. Praz was just the guy who was the patient aggressor. I mean, the guy just sat there and all of a sudden when he just had his hands up, it was just like all of the pit reacted. And there were so many guys that were more vocal and maybe they all traded big, but when he did something, it mattered. It had an impact. Yeah. And I just respected that. And it was like he knew to time it. Like how many times I'd see him put his hands up at the lows or the highs. And I'm like, how does he know to do this? And it was just impressive. And I think it just goes.
I felt the same way when I was like, I used to boogie down like because the Eurodollar options would end at I don't know 2:30 or whatever, so I would boogie down to and jump in the Nasdaq pit for the last hour of the day and fuck around, and that's where I met like Pax and all those guys, But like I remember like the big dudes in that pit, like when it was absolute fucking mayhem, they would just be like people would be like, it would be like everything was in fast motion, and then these guys would be like in slow motion.
I know.
And just be like boom, you know what I mean? And like, and I always thought like, fuck, if I could ever like achieve that, if I could ever slow down the matrix, where like as everyone is panicking and freaking out, these dudes are operating in like they're not even moving quickly. They're like turning to the broker slowly. You know what I mean? Like it's like, and everyone else is like this, and you can see these fucking guys in the middle of it, just like slowly doing their thing. And those were the guys that were killing it.
Until I was able to slow things down in my career, and it took a lot of years because I'm anxious. I'm an aggressor. I'm just, I got to touch the buttons. I've got to do something. Right. Until I finally slowed things down at certain times in the market where you were just like, you just knew it. I mean, nothing, I would never compare myself to those greats, but I was able to do it in my corner of the world where I was like, okay, man, you've got some control over your decision-making now. And you just relate to that and you think about that. And it's like Tiger Woods, when everybody's staring at him to make a putt in the Masters, he's calm. Look at Tom Brady in the fourth quarter when he's down in a Super Bowl. They slow things down and they're able to execute in those moments. Yeah. And as traders, I think we can all relate to that. And I think that when you and I look back at who the best were, it was analyzing something at the moment and then actually being able to execute with calmness. Yeah. And it's just something about that. I want to move on to the next thing because this leads into my story. Yeah. Who was the craziest trader that you came across?
Well, there were,
in the pit. There's a lot of wild men, a lot of wild guys outside the pit. I'm talking about in the pit where it was just you're like, he's off the hinges.
In my pit, like J. Todd Schaefer was like he was the high mark for the most fucked up human being. And the crazy thing about it was he was rich as fuck. He was a really smart guy. He was engaged to someone's daughter who invented vitamin water or something. Like literally, like he was engaged to a billionaire's daughter, and he's trading. He's making, but that did not work out for him. You know what I mean? Like it didn't. and in the futures pit, Coin was definitely the craziest motherfucker I've ever seen in the futures pit.
And that's who I was going to say, and this leads me to the story. God bless his soul. Coin is passed. He was one of my great friends.
Yeah.
He was one of the craziest people. I'd never seen anyone who had the amount of energy that he had in my life. But he was also one of the best people, especially.
Really? Like, I didn't know him personally. I thought he was like, I used to see him and shit, and I'd be like, wow, that guy's just fucking crazy. You know what I mean? Like, but especially in the pit, like he would buy 200 lots in the NASDAQ in the middle of like a fast market. Like the guy was just literally out of his mind.
He was. And so here's my story about Coin, Anthony. Mm-hmm. So he was at Spike. He was one of the owners of Spike. I was clearing Spike at the time. Of course, I'm struggling and losing. This is like year 2 or 3 for me. And I think it was, year 2. And I go to him and say, well, I walk into his office. And he's like, What'd you do today, dummy? You know, and he's crazy, right? And I'd be laughing. And I'd be like, I'm just struggling, Ant. I don't know what to do. I said, I only have a couple more months left on my seat lease. I've got to figure something out because I'm just, I can't keep my head above water. He goes, well, here's what I've been looking to do. He goes, I've been looking to put a guy in the Eurodollar front month pit to take orders for the guys to trade electronically. He's like, we need someone to go in there. Yeah. Would you do it? Yeah. And I'm like, okay, sure. I go down to membership. He puts me on an IMM. He pays the difference. He goes down there and I was working before the S&P open or throughout the S&P open because I would just go back later. And I was the first, if not I was one of maybe a few of us. And I didn't stay in there long, taking the orders from the Eurodollars guys to execute electronically. They'd all be watching unemployment and they would stand there and they'd be like, right, buy 200, buy 500. And I'd be like, I couldn't even take all the orders. Before you knew it, the pit was filled with guys doing what I was doing. Yeah. I had left. I ended up going back. But the kind of guy he was put me in a position again to make money. That was and
he
just was
like
generous.
For a struggling trader, for someone to say like, hey, dude, like I got something, I got a layup for you for a couple of months, get your fucking head straight. Yep. Like that's huge. Huge.
I mean, it just is like, it changed my life. I always will owe him that. And, I'm so thankful for him.
That's
Jimmy, this is great so far. When we come back, everybody, we're going to take a quick break. I see all the questions in there. I'm going to take a look at some of the questions. We're going to get to questions and we're going to go to the charts. Jimmy, what do you want me to pull up first? Just S&P daily?
Yeah.
Just pull up S&P daily. We'll go from there. We're going to see how Jimmy analyzes the markets, and then we're going to get to your questions. Hope you guys are enjoying this as much as us. We'll be back in just about a minute.
Replace your exchange with TradeStation Crypto. Dealing with multiple exchanges is complicated, and it takes time, except with TradeStation Crypto. Because we are not an exchange. We are a broker. You have access to multiple pools of liquidity, all in one platform, in one account, one way. Trade crypto your way. Plus, earn interest on your eligible cryptocurrencies. Get started in one click.
Trade the global markets with Trading Technologies. TT is the world's fastest commercially available futures trading platform, now with integrated tools for advanced options trading, cryptocurrencies, and trade surveillance. Learn more at tradingtechnologies.com.
Why did I add futures to my trading strategy? 24/7 access to diverse global markets, like wheat. Can you say growth opportunity? We should probably harvest that.
All right, we are back, everybody. We've got the charts in front of us. First of all, shout out to Canny and Pax for tuning in. Rob, there's so many of you guys. Thank you guys for the questions. Phil Riccardi, what's up, my guy? Jingle Bell, Patrick, I'm just going through. Love that everybody is here joining us live. Jimmy, so much fun being here with you, my brother. And we've got a lot of questions that we're going to get to after we do a little bit of the. We got Josh Man mode in here too. We've got the whole crew. Yeah, I know. So thank you everybody for coming in.
This is the point where I get my balls busted. I know what's coming here.
So one of the questions that everyone was asking me about when bringing you on the show, of course, we had fun with the first segment talking about a whole bunch of stuff and about the pit and everything like that. But talking about the markets and how you analyze them, and I've talked with you. It's funny, I've talked with you so many times. We have such different styles and way we approach things. It's just totally different. And I know that you look at the S&P and the VIX, and I pulled up an S&P here just on a daily, a blank slate. And Jimmy, just talk to us a little bit about how what your approach is, what your style is, how you do your analysis.
Sure. Personally, everyone's brain is different. So some people are more suited to trade markets that move really fast. Some people are suited to trade that really rangy, mind-numbing shit. You know what I mean? They're just that type of person. Me personally, I need to trade I found my sweet spot was trading something that's somewhat volatile and relevant, but finding another market that trades at maybe a slower delta to that market. So because once you're a spreader, you're a spreader, and I'm a spreader. I need to buy this and sell that and move shit around that's just the way my brain works. So that's what and it's been a progression of how, there's been a bunch of different trades that worked the same way. I traded, crude and natural gas spreads against the outright type of thing. You know what I mean? Those are the type of when I see when I see something like natural gas that just moves like a wild woman, I feel I'm not going to tame the beast. So I'm going to tame the second derivative of the beast. So that might be the front month spread or maybe a double spread. You know what I mean? So it moves, you're getting that wild movement. So you're getting a lot of opportunities, but you're trading it at a slower delta to the actual beast that's, moving. Yeah. So that's what kind of led me into S&Ps versus VIX. I was trading my own money. I'm a one-man show at the time, so I just couldn't watch everything. I couldn't I understand all the skew programs and all the different there's guys out there that have their tentacles on everything, but I knew I wasn't going to be that guy. I couldn't have my I couldn't see everything, so I kind of I focused on where is this shit all filtering to? And it's all it's filtering to the VIX. Okay. So you can be some fucking genius on skew and variance and everything like that. And you can kill in those individual markets for yourself. But as an average trader, or a retail trader like myself, that just doesn't have the time or the, access to all that bullshit, I need to kind of see one market where all that's filtering into. So, and that was the VIX for me. And it's not just the VIX. It's people always look at the VIX or they look at the futures or whatever. That's really, the VIX trade is not anything to do with that. It's really in the spreads. It's really in the curve. It's when, and how people position and, in the term structure, So,
explain that though. Explain how I'm trying to get inside your mind a little bit. I mean, this is not what I do. So it's new to me. It's different. And I know a lot of people out there are going, he's saying some things I don't maybe quite understand.
Right. So and this is kind of the cool thing about this is anyone can see this. All right. This is layman's terms of hey, don't, be careful if this happens type of thing. So you've got the VIX curve, it's like any other curve. It's usually in contango. It's smooth because, when you think about it, of course, longer dated options are going to be a little more expensive. They have, you know what I mean? If you buy flood insurance for 3 months is, as opposed to 1 year, it's going to be a different price. You know what I mean? So, but when that like gets perverted, that's when you're like, when that term structure of that smooth curve gets perverted, I know that someone is fucking around in the future in all these options markets. That is, that's what led me to like, when I say that, what happens are there's curve inversions. Okay. Spreads start trading negatively to the other spreads because of the liquidity that's jumping into the market, into like all the options markets that people are hedging at a certain time. So this is reflected in the VIX, but it's like, it's a very easy way to, instead of looking at all these skew programs and everything like that, just look at like, I focus on the linkage, I follow the butterflies and the relationships between the futures months, because when the butterflies get perverted, and when they get negative, that someone at the very least, someone is hedging at that point in the curve, and they're hedging hard. So as you get into that area, you're just like, well, I don't know why they're doing it. It was kind of like, like right before, the pandemic, the curve had inverted like right around February, Jan of the pandemic. So it was like, I didn't know, I remember tweeting out like, hey, this is inverted. This fly is inverted. It's saying that there's going to be a problem. I have no fucking idea what the problem is. Like, and we were all trying to guess what the problem would be, like before Christmas, before the pandemic hit. And then it turned out to be the pandemic. So like, it's a great leading indicator, and it's, it's not something that I could teach in 15 minutes on.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
The philosophy is, I'm getting more and more of it. I mean, what are you seeing right now in markets? What is your strategy telling you about the current environment?
Well, first of all, the VIX curve is pretty smooth for the next few months, and which makes sense, because the Fed is basically telling you, we're going to be easy, we're going to be accommodative, we're going to keep printing until like you prove to us that inflation is just transitory. They keep reiterating that message. So like, I know, I don't want to be early, like. So you're a believer that this all fucking falls apart as soon as these guys taper or try to remove themselves from this. You don't want to be early on that trade. You get fucking killed. So my philosophy is, as long as these guys are still, talking so dovishly and so easy. I mean, like, it's amazing to me that like I've been, if the Fed would have talked like this in like 2001, 2002, you know what I mean? People would be like, holy fuck, I'm going to sell my mother's house and go into the equities, But now they're like, the Fed is like, hey, we're just gonna, we need to see inflation prints like consistently. We need to see, they're giving these like benchmarks where they're basically telling you they're going to keep going on. Sorry about that.
No worries. Did you see the message from Canny?
No.
Can you see it? I don't know. It says, I have no idea what Jimmy is saying, but it sounds so sexy. We love you, Canny.
Fucking Canny.
So
the long and short of it is, I don't get out of the market when I think the Fed is printing,
Yeah. Jimmy's got some construction in the background, everybody. He's got something. He's building something back there.
Yeah, dude, I was worried about this.
Yeah, no worries. But here, I want to go to your tweets a little bit, then I'm going to go to questions. So these two tweets are this one got almost 500 likes. It said, it doesn't end when people start pointing at it and saying it's going to end. It ends after all those people get screwed and embarrassed and are forced to say it may not end this time. Just pretty similar to what you just kind of talked about there. And you're thinking?
And I'm sorry, can you even hear me at this point?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's fine. Keep going.
All right. I'm trying to give people perspective from a guy that traded from 95 to 2000. I've traded the last bubble, So I'm just trying to give perspective to people that are like coming in really early on this concept of like the world's coming to an end. Everything is going to be fucked. We've come too far too fast.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Don't worry. Yeah, your sound is fine. Okay. And I'm just thinking if that tweet stemmed from, kind of what you're saying in the VIX and just the feel of the markets. I mean, to me, it's
like Nate. Other than like some twat who always says you should sell this fucking shit because you never know, it's over leveraged and oh my God, and the numbers. You know what I mean? Like, I don't listen to people like that because the fact of the matter is I can make my own deductions. Okay. First of all, the Fed has to pivot to negative. They haven't done that. They're like stroking the market right now. They're literally like, they're like falling over themselves, trying to explain to the market right now that nothing is going to happen this year. They're not going to fuck with it. They're not going to taper it. Powell fucked around in December in like 2019. He learned his lesson about like fucking with the markets in low liquidity in December. They're not going to do anything. So it's going to be next year. So now we're talking like 5 months away before they even like start to slowly taper. You're gonna front run that position. Fuck that. I'll go in long right into that position, right into that moment. Anyways, I think the next 6 months we're gonna just keep going.
Yeah, I mean, and going back to your strategy, if things start to change throughout your strategy, you'll see it through price. Just like what everybody always says, price will tell us what it is. So I'm gonna go to questions now. So everybody, if you want to put your questions in, you got to put them in YouTube. I see some questions on Twitter I'll go to as well. But what's cool about this is that I don't know if you could see this, Jimmy, or not, but it says, hey, I have a question for Jimmy. If I have no formal training, how can I best become a profitable trader? Is there even a chance of getting good enough? What do I need to know and where could I learn? Thanks. That's from Morgan.
There is like Twitter's is a pretty amazing platform. There's a lot of really, really good traders out there that are teaching and willing to share. There's a lot of stuff that's free that people are willing to share, and there's stuff that you can like purchase. But you know what? Like people kind of freak out when they're like on Twitter. There's such a negative thing about like, oh, this dude's charging. And it's like, well, dude, he's teaching you how to trade, and he's like been trading for 30 fucking years, and he's got all this like knowledge that he's and he's charging you like what, $50-$100 a month, and you're offended by this because he's not disseminating it for free on social media. Like, I mean, that's kind of the fucked up part. But there is a ton of people. Like personally, like I do. There's one service. This dude, Rich Miller, that we traded in at S&P pit.
Yeah,
he has a service called Handle Stats that I do subscribe to. Because I've been picking Rich's brain for like 10 years. So I like the fact that I can actually give him a little bit of money for like helping me, trade, but he's a tremendous teacher. There's a ton of guys out there, there's never been more accessible, like training for trading and learning than right now.
Another question from Ryan G. How do you deal with getting your face kicked in by a trade? Also, what is your best trade of all time?
I usually curl up in a ball and cry. And then I take a shower, and then I go back and cry a little more. And no, I'm the biggest pussy on the planet when I get my balls kicked in. You know what I mean? Like I'm no different than anyone else. But I just do it alone. You know what I mean? Like some people need to do that, like they need to show everybody that they just got got fucked in a trade. I do prefer to cry alone in the corner. So that's how I deal with that shit. Like, but there's no easy answer on how you deal with like getting smoked. My best trade of all time was probably there's a difference between like the best trade of all time where you like did a trade and you fucking killed it, You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've done those trades where, I bought, 1,000 straddles, and at the end of the day, they're worth $750,000. And I'm like, woo, I'm brilliant. When in reality, I'm just, I don't know. I probably got lucky at the time, to make that kind of money on a trade. But then there's been trades where it's like, where I would call them my best trades because it was like to save my ass or to say, like, there was a trade in 2016. I was working for a fund, and the dude, like, he was trading algorithms in the VIX, and he was like, using, like the VIX futures trade in pennies, but the spreads trade in nickels. So there's like this like spread where you can like get in on the penny and then get out on the nickel in the, what I mean? So there's like there's this like an R, but like, so, it's like an arms race, So this guy was like killing it in the beginning. He had a really great algo, but he was starting to get run over like in 2016, especially in fast moves. So like we had this one day, it was like the final dip in that like move from like, that consolidation from like 2014 to 2016. It was like that final dip, and he had gotten fucking run over, and he was hung on like 500 VIX futures. And he was like, dude, like, I'm blowing up the firm right now. If this keeps going, I need a Hail Mary. Like, tell me where do I need to buy like hundreds of S&P futures or we're done. And I'm like, but you're hung short VIX. Like, what do you? And he's like, dude, listen, just tell me where to buy the futures. And it was like, and we were like diving at the time. And I'm like, all right, so like, like that was a fucking pressure call. Like, and the worst thing about it was I was working in Florida, and I used to work remotely and consult with this firm, but I was in New York at the time, so I was in the office. So I was like sitting next to the fucking dude as he was like, like, where am I buying these? And I'm like, and at that point I was like, listen, I would pay, 18.15 on the load. And if it goes under 18, you just blow them all out and we're done, And he was like, all right. And he goes, do you believe in that number? I'm like, I do believe in that number. Like, if I don't believe we're crashing here. I don't believe, Bullard had just come out and like said a bunch of like dovish shit at the time. I don't believe, but that was the most stressful fucking, because the guy starts clicking in on the S&P's 100 at a clip on my, call. And I was like, I felt like I was going to faint as he was doing it, because I was like, oh my God, like, he's doing it. And it turned out like, I think the low was like 18.13 of that move on that day. And it went up from there, and it saved the firm. And it was like, so like, I didn't get paid for that call, but that might have been my greatest trade, just from under the gun, under pressure, where a guy was like putting a gun to my head and saying like, make the call for, several $1 million right now, or you're done. So
that's cool. That's a great story. Got a few more questions we're going to get to. I like this question a lot. JP said, now that most of today's newer traders are doing this from their home, what advice would you give us pajama traders in getting much needed mentor advice to excel in this career?
Yeah, I would say like, the biggest thing that you can do to like have a profitable trading career at this point is like have another avenue, have other revenue streams that are coming in. And I don't give a shit if you're fucking mowing lawns on the side and you're trading. It'll help. It's a big difference. Okay. And rather than just sitting there and having it be your end all be all, and because everyone wants to do that, because they love the allure of trading, because you can live anywhere, you can move, you can, there's money, there's this and that, but like you can't go from A to Z in trading. So you have to, like, even personally, even me at this point in my career, I need other revenue streams in order for me not to have a fucking nervous breakdown as I'm trading. You know what I mean? So that would be like my biggest advice is like, don't be like, oh, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do this. Like trade, but like do something on the side. You know what I mean? It's not a full-time, like you can do this effectively and make money as a pajama trader without going full all in and, needing a psychiatrist at the end of the year.
I believe that it's not making money in trading that's hard. It's making the amount of money that we want to make in trading is what's so hard.
Yeah.
It's like I've had to temper my expectations as well. And then you get years like last year, and you get periods where it's not so good. Like maybe a little bit lately for me, it's been kind of, give and take. You just got to be around long enough, man. You just got to be around long enough to exist to when times are good, and then they're not going to be good for a while.
That's the key, dude. That's the key, is to stay in the game when it's lame and to be able to be there when it's like killer, that's and to be able to like, so like you either need a fucking war chest behind you, or you need to have like some other thing that you're doing that like either pays, even if it pays part of the bills, it'll help you psychologically in your trading. If you're at that point where you think like, hey, I'm making money here, I'm getting pretty good at this, I'm at the point where I feel like I might be able to like, make the jump and like quit my job. Like my advice every time to those dudes that like they hit me on the DM and always say that shit, I'm like, don't quit your job. No. Yeah. You do this with your job. Time. It'll make you a better trader. Okay. You quit that job, you're fucking done.
I want to move on to Big Toasty's question. What do you think about the dome? I call it dome. People call it dime. I don't even know what the proper one is. Don't give me crap about it, everybody. And trading with market profile and volume profile.
I think I think everything has merit. So it definitely has merit. I see guys making incredible calls off it. I don't look at it, but you know what? Like if you look at charts, you kind of look at, depth of market. You kind of look at volume. You can see where consolidations build up. You can see where the market spends time. You know what I mean? Like I can see Dom in my head. Like I don't need the fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like when the market's been trading the same fucking price for 2 days, I can imagine the Dom is like really fat and you know what I mean? Like I don't need to see that. But the dudes that do it, they especially like there's TikTok is out there. He's a big Dom guy. And he makes some great calls off it. He really does.
I respect style preference. It's style preference. I used to look at it all the time. I love market profile. I love volume profile. Right. I still use volume profile a little bit. I don't use market profile, and I don't need to look at the dome anymore. I'll look at it in an area where I feel I need to look at it. But to stare at that all day, my body can't handle staring at that thing all day anymore. I stared at it enough. Exactly. How important is it to? This is from Rob. What's up, Rob? How important is it to be around other traders to share and collaborate?
Extremely important. Extremely important. I before Twitter, like I got on Twitter and everything, I left NYMEX in like 2011 and I was trading alone from home. And I literally felt like I was the last futures point and click trader on the face of the earth. Like, I'm like, because all my friends had like blown out, quit, said, fuck you. It's not working. You know what I mean? Like all the pit guys were toast at that point. I wasn't talking to anybody. I was literally just like sitting in front of my 6 screens alone. And I was like, and it was the worst thing, absolute worst thing. The fact that Twitter is there and that you can make these relationships and talk to people and bounce ideas off of, you need that. That is tantamount. That's like the greatest thing that the floor ever provided was you were standing around 15 assholes that you could like talk about the market with constantly and get like their opinions. This guy's always wrong. This guy's a pussy. This guy's too aggressive. And you learned everyone's like propensity to trade, and you would like take it into consideration. I do the same thing on Twitter now. Like I have 100 guys that I follow that like I know when they're right, I know when they're wrong, I know when they have conviction. Like it's huge. It's huge.
A lot of great questions in here. I'm trying to think. Oh, this one I'm going to go to. Yeah. Oh, this is actually cool. What's up, Trader Smarts? I love this, that I could actually put the questions in there, because this is really good that people could see them and follow through. I'm going to go to Twitter in a second, because I know some people sent in some questions on Twitter, so I'm not leaving you guys out of this.
Thanks, Trader Smarts.
Yeah, he's such a good guy. A lot of them are similar. I'm trying to figure out which other one I want to go to before. Oh, this one's good. Do you think developing traders need to learn psychologically what it feels like to win?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. You need, that's an important part of the quotient, is like, you need, because you want that. That's what drives you, like that fucking kill. You know what I mean? Like that's motivational. You're certainly, you don't want to, you learn in the losses, but you motivate in the wins,
No, I love it. I mean, and I'm going to go to Twitter now, and Canadian Soccer Mom. Is she a great follower or what? I mean,
that's my girl.
Yeah, she's awesome. What was the single worst trade that you were forced to close, that would have turned out fine in hindsight?
I was like, it's funny that she asked me that, because I was like thinking about that last night, and I was like, that's every time I've ever blown out. You know what I mean? Like, I blow out, I puke, and like 2 days later, it's like, I would have made 10 mil instead of losing 10 mil. So it was like, like that's every, like, so I, as a trader for this many years, like that's, you get, every trade is like, tortures me like that. There's some that like are extra, like the when I got fucked on the millennial fly in 1999, like that one really like pissed me off, because I knew it was bullshit, and I knew it was like, it taught me though another lesson, that like, it doesn't matter if it's bullshit. If you have it on the wrong way, you're fucked and you're going to blow out, But it was also like, it was like one of those screw jobs that, like, as soon as I like puked for an unbelievable loss, it went like snap back the other way, and every swinging dick on the planet was like, no shit, it went snap back. That was a bunch of bullshit. And it's like, yeah, where were you last week, motherfucker, when I was getting killed? Like that's the part, that's the torturous part of this job. You know what I mean? It's like, is that because everything snaps back, every puke, anyone that's ever blown out and puked, it's probably 2 weeks later, they would have been up 30 million, Yeah.
Oh, I puked some ETH the other day at 1800 when it was on that big smackdown. Had a nice package on. I'm like, and it was a little bit prior to my stop, and then it just blipped down. Next thing you know, I'm just watching at 90, and that's when it went all the way back up to 2300 or whatever. But,
and like puking is like I have a funny story.
I needed to be out. I just needed to be out. I was just like, I was in too many already. I'm just trading like garbage, but I'm just like, I needed the pressure removed.
That's like the one thing that like I the one thing that I can say, like I've ever read from that Peter Brandt guy that I like kind of agree with, and I like he like gets out and he settles all his positions and gets like flat on Friday, so he can like kind of think on the weekend. Like I kind of agree with that, but I'll take it to the next step. Like, if you have a position that's annoying you and that's fucking you, it's fine. But you have like severe conviction, like say you think like this, this coin is definitely, you're long-term bullish on it, but you have this position that's like fucking torturing you. Like vomiting some of it or vomiting all of it and just kind of freeing your mind and then like re-entering it as a person without a position can be one of the most liberating experiences, and it can be like extremely beneficial.
Do we even get into, not today, but you, me, Candy, we've been talking about doing some stuff at night. We got to go over that Peter Brand story that you and I, is that one of the funniest stories
When
ever?
he threw me out of the, Peter Brand threw me out of his
I don't remember a time I laughed so hard.
That was fucked up.
That
was the most fucked up thing.
We're going to save that story for all of you guys for a different day. Because
I busted his balls on Twitter.
It was,
yeah.
It was great. We'll say that one. That was
fucking great.
That made me laugh. All right. This is a good question. I'd say your name, but I will totally botch this name up. So I'm not even going to say it. I'll say your last name, Fidan, if it's probably wrong too. Have you ever experienced burnout? If yes, how did you understand that you had to stop trading? How long did it last? Coming back was better? Not many people talk about that as if we're trading machines. Any thoughts are appreciated. Thanks. That is great. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is. It is a killer question, and I definitely have. Like I've blown out mentally, like a couple of times and burned out. And it takes you don't. I never get there logically. I'm never like, hey, I'm not thinking correctly. I should take some time off. It's always like I crash and burn. The plane hits the mountain and I'm a burning wreckage. And then I'm like, holy fuck, I need some time. And I never as I said to her, I'm an addict of the market. So I'm not going to quit looking at the markets, but it is extremely beneficial sometimes to take that, you burn out, take a step back, watch the markets and watch them without trading. Watch them without taking risk, especially if you can afford to do that. You know what I mean? It's easy to say that, there's a lot of guys out there, I'm sure, that are watching this and they're like, hey, fuck you, asshole. I got to make $500 a day. I don't have time to sit back and watch the market. But that's the problem. That's why you get into these situations where you become this fucking just, mental, degenerate because you keep going like that. I mean, personally, my wife will love this story because, the first time I burned out, I knew I burned out because I forgot my my anniversary 2 years in a row. I mean, it's one thing. One thing to forget your anniversary, but I forgot it for 2 years in a row. That and at that point, my wife was like, you know what? Seriously, you're a fucking moron. You have to do something different, and that's but you can get to that point in trading where it's you're you can go down these dark alleys. And so you have to be careful about burnout and taking care of your physical and your mental, or there will be issues.
No doubt. I mean, for me, for Candy, who's listening, Pax, our boy Pax, thanks for coming in today. We've all been through this. I mean, stress crushes the body. I mean, everyone knows my story with the heart attack. Recently, our boy Candy, I know Pax has had some health issues over the years, and we know how much we've learned from our health issues and how we have to put the time in away from the screens. And yeah, I mean, it's just so important to have balance. And really, you don't see that early in your career because all you want to do is make money.
Right.
But later in your career, the body catches up with you. Right. You see how much of an impact the mind has on the body, and it becomes, something you have to deal with then, and we all deal with it. So if you guys are younger out there trading, understand that. Put the time in for the health as well. So that's going to do it here, Jimmy. We had a lot of great questions. We had,
right on.
We had a lot
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So great having you here. Tell everybody where they could find you on Twitter. I know that you're Jimmy Jude, or is it James Jude?
Jimmy Jude 13 on Twitter. And hey, you know what? I'm no different than you guys. I'm trading every day. I have a family. I have kids. I have stresses. So if if there's one thing, I just try to keep people on the right side of the market and kind of give them ideas. But if anybody wants to hit me up on the DM or wants to talk to me or has whatever, Go ahead. I'm accessible. I answer that shit. So, you know.
No, yeah.
And I love talking. I love talking to everybody too. So it's beneficial to me. It's beneficial to them. It's cool. So
yeah,
I'm an open book.
No, you really are, and it's always great to hear your thoughts, my friend. And I can't thank you enough for coming on Futures Radio Show today.
Awesome. Thank you very much for having me, dude. Really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week. We're going to be doing these live shows. Coming up is Jared Tendler. My boy Pax is coming on live in a couple of weeks. We got Candy coming up. Everybody, if you like the show, subscribe to YouTube. And I will see you guys next week. Have a good one. Cheers. Thank you for listening to Futures Radio Show. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Never miss an episode. Go to anthonycrudele.com and get on our email list for show notifications and for free content that is exclusively for subscribers. Also on anthonycrudele.com, you will find tons of videos and education on trading futures, options, and crypto. Past performance is not indicative of future results. Opinions expressed are solely my own and my guests, and they do not express the views or opinions of my sponsors. Futures Radio Show is produced by Crudele Productions.